Welcome back to our Wealthy Mindset, where we talk about all things money, mindset, and business. It's your host, Cindy, your fractional CFO and financial bestie. And today I had the opportunity to have a conversation with Dr. Payal Beri. She's an organizational psychologist, global speaker, podcast host, and founder of RK Empathy, an experimental company disrupting how they connect, lead, and create impact through immersive storytelling and emotionally intelligent strategy to rebuild community in a divided world. With nearly 2 decades of expertise in psychology and human behavior, specializing in empathy, she is on a mission to help people cultivate meaningful relationships that drive real transformation. Payal is the visionary behind the Empathy Storytellers Salon, a curated community where change makers, creatives, intellectuals, and thought leaders come to expand their curiosity, engage in deep, soul driven conversations, and reconnect to the power of human connection. These gatherings leave people feeling seen, inspired, and ready to lead purposefully. She's a sought after keynote speaker, and she's spoken at a lot of institutions, including NASA, Google, Flatiron Health, Betterment, and Huntington Ingalls, and is the host of the podcast Reframing Perspectives, a show focused on bringing everyday circumstances to light and thinking outside the box so we can collectively find more humane ways to solve our human challenges. Her philosophy is simple yet powerful, where curiosity speaks connection and empathy rewrites the story. Today, I had the opportunity to sit down with her and talk to her about how she walked away from a $450,000 client, what that felt like, why she stepped away, and what advice she can give someone that feels like they need to do the work because of the money. So let's get into it. Hi, Pyle. Thanks for joining me on her Wealthy Mindset today.
Thank you for having me, Cindy.
Could you share a little bit about yourself and how you support your clients?
Yeah, so I would say that my work is in the intersection of empathy, human behavior, and cultural context. So, my work and my mission is really about helping people, leaders, communities realize that we have a lot more in common as humans than otherwise led to believe by those who benefit from our divide. And so, my work really is through the experience, like I curate experiences and create more empathy, immersive experiences so that we can bring some of these more challenging conversations that are happening around the world and we can actually take empathy from an abstract concept and idea for people who've never experienced it, don't really understand it. So it's hard for them to say that I have empathy. And how do we kind of place them into these immersive spaces so that they actually understand what we're talking about from a more real perspective, and ultimately from there they're able to then we can actually have like a more healthier informed dialogue around some of the challenges that we have in our world.
That's amazing. Are there certain industries and business owners you work with?
Yeah. So, it's kind of, I say like emotional intelligence, empathy is industry agnostic. So it's not necessarily, which industry do I work with, but I would say that the people and the individuals that typically come to me to help, where I get to also help them produce their impactful work are change makers. They're individuals. It doesn't matter if they're a entrepreneur, if they're a lawyer, if they're an artist, if creative thinker, whatever it may be. But if they feel deeply compelled to making a difference in the world, that is my type of human. And that is typically the people who come to me to help them, like, how can I take their work and help them, like, creatively customize it in a way where their audience can truly understand the impact of what they're doing. So I would say it's more about the psychographic versus it is like a demographic.
Wow, that is so powerful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I have I always say it's like I'm a creative soul at the heart of me. I was a dancer, choreographer, and then I was a film major in undergrad. But my work, my master's, and my PhD is all in psychology. But the heart of me is a true creative, and I think it probably contributes to the fact that I do have like ADD, and so I'm always thinking of a million different ways to like curate and have businesses, and entrepreneurship is just like the right fit. But also understand that I can't do it all, so it's really fun for me to hop into other people's businesses and be like, oh my gosh, here's something you can totally do and deepen, your impact in and the way you can scale it. Um, but it's not mine. So it's like I get to just like play in other people's like spaces, but then also be like, all right, I know what my lane is.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
We had like connected on Threads, and you were
Oh.
sharing how you had to walk away from like a $450,000 client. Could you share what that experience was like and how you knew that you needed to walk away?
Oh man. Oh, that takes me back. So this was about 3 years ago now. Um, and walking away from $450,000 contract where I literally, before I was about to sign it, I said, I cannot do this. And I walked away from it. In that moment, I literally felt in my body, I felt like every like piece of my body just relaxing. I literally felt the release of all this tension I'd been carrying that I didn't even know I was carrying subconsciously, but
Yeah,
it was the best decision I could have made for me, the business, and also the way that I want to make sure that, the community that I get to support really gets to be supportive. So it was a very difficult decision, but it was actually, no, I'm gonna take that back. It was a difficult decision in the sense where it's like, "Oh my gosh, this much money," but it
yeah.
wasn't a difficult decision in the sense of, like, what I would be sacrificing and trading for that money.
How long did it take you to realize that they just weren't the right fit and the money just wasn't worth it?
So there's 2 things to this. Um, I was building a business that I absolutely hated. And when I first started building my business, which was back in, I left my job in 2019 and it was like 4 months before COVID hit. And that's when I decided I was going to build a business. And it's like, well, great timing. So,
Yeah,
because of the timing of everything, I noticed that, the core beliefs or these underlying scarcity mindsets that I had of, it's COVID, I just left a job, like, my stability, income, all these things to build a business. I just needed to jump in and be like, let me just grab contracts and do things that are just going to kind of have money coming in.
right,
And ultimately what that led to is that me leaving corporate America was because I didn't love what I was doing in corporate America, but it was something that I knew. And so because of that, I built a business doing the exact same thing that I was doing, which was like leading, emotionally intelligent leadership programs for corporations and organizations. But my goal was ultimately to kind of move away and shed the corporate,
yeah.
layers within me. And so this particular client contract that I had was in that line when I was building out this entire thing. And I remember I had a coach who was really pushing me hard for this contract. And I remember saying to her that I don't understand why you're telling me to build a business that I hate when you've built a business that you love. And that was just something where when I first got, started pitching and, got in communication with this client, which was it's a Fortune 50 organization,
Yeah.
it took about 9 months to
Oh,
even
wow.
get to the point of like the contract being like solidified. What was happening was that as I was going through the process, there was a lot of pulling teeth. And the idea behind even having the $450,000 contract, I was tying this to this belief that, like, oh my God, once I have this, then I can finally feel like stable in terms of like what I have coming in.
Yeah.
And I can then go build the thing that I really have been aching to build, which is what I'm doing today. And so that was what was pushing me to keep going. But intuitively, the fact that this thing was just looming, and because of the grandiose of the client, the contract, and everything, what happened was I ended up spending 8 months starting to interview for, team members, employees. I was because it was such a massive project that as a small business owner, right? Like there's so much I can do and I knew what I needed. And it also meant that if we're going to support this contract, then I'm going to have to kind of reduce the other contracts that I'm working with and kind of be a little bit softer with those because of just like, again, our bandwidth of what we could do.
Yeah.
So I'm spending all this time in interviewing, hiring for employees, all of these pieces. And as we're getting closer and closer to signing this contract, there was something in me that was just saying that, what are you doing? This, like, if you end up signing this contract, this isn't actually a door of opportunity for you. This is a door that's actually going to close those opportunities because they are, from what I was learning, there was a lot of toxicity in the culture. What ultimately led me to deciding to not sign it was I found out more and more that as much as they wanted me to support their frontline leaders, their middle managers, in developing this, the top executives wanted no part of it.
Oh,
And
wow.
and what I learned was that, they wanted to go ahead and have everyone else learn, but there was a lot of fear that was in these leaders and individuals. And for me to be, successful and show the impact of this, executives absolutely need to be a part of this. They can't just sign a check and say, okay, you guys go do it. I also learned that some of the top executives at this place, not only when I say toxicity in terms of, they were challenging to work with, but there was a particular leader who was very erratic in their behavior. So, people would walk on eggshells around this person. They would be fearful that in 1 minute they could snap at you.
Oh, wow.
They would throw things like a stapler or whatever. And so my internal thinking was, wait a second, how am I supposed to teach these middle managers, frontline leaders to have the courage to speak up for themselves, advocate, to, curate a psychologically safe place when the ultimate leader that they're reporting to has so much chaos and actually enjoyed it, believed that fear
Wow.
was the way to lead. And the more fearful they are, like found pleasure in making sure that people were scared of this person. So, how was I going to be successful? All I would have done is that I would have gone to pay, would have gone this big pay.
Yeah.
I would have had stressed out employees. We would have become the scapegoat of why the culture is not improving. And ultimately, I was deciding that's like, wait a second, I'm not working at this company. I'm a business owner. Why would I want to put me and my team through this experience working in such a toxic environment? Might as well have just stayed at a 9 to 5 job if I was going to do that.
Yeah.
So that is kind of where I realized that it would have taken up so much mental and emotional energy to keep this particular client so happy that I actually wouldn't have been able to have the time and space to work on the projects that I'm working on today and the work that I feel so deeply compelled to do today. So that is ultimately what made me decide that walking away was the best decision.
Wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so common, like when you start up a business, you feel like you have to take on anybody and everybody. That was
Hmm.
me personally. I left the corporate accounting tax world to start up on my own because I'm like, I don't want to go through that. And
Yeah.
then I did the exact same thing. Started taking
Yeah.
on anybody and everybody, started having health issues, and then I just had to ask myself, like, what am I doing?
Yes. All to that. Like,
Yeah.
actually, you just brought up something that reminded me for 8 months of that entire experience, my eye was twitching 24/7.
Oh, wow.
And I thought like, oh, well, I have autoimmune illness. I have like, I'm pre-diabetic. I have all these other issues. So it's probably that or whatever. But it's like my eye was constantly twitching.
Yeah.
And after I said, I'm done, like, and I walked away and I did it in a very
Stopped.
graceful, kind way. And funny enough, the person who I was like working with internally, they got it. Like, even as nicely as I said it, like they totally understood and they didn't even like for a minute flinched of why we were walking away from it.
Yeah.
Um, After I sent that email and we had that conversation and it was officially done, my eye immediately stopped twitching.
Wow.
So it is. It's like it's a cost to your health. It's a cost to your mental, and it's also when you take on projects when you're saying yes to anything and everything. Ultimately, when you're and then you're get resentful, right? And
Yeah.
it's like you're working out of this like toxic space, right? And it's like these wounds of like, oh my God, what if I don't get another paycheck? It's like again, you're used to that predictability, and you go out to this like roller coaster ride. It's so easy for all of that to seep in, and then it starts affecting your personal life. It starts affecting your relationships, your friendships, because you're moody, you're not feeling great,
Hmm.
right? Like you've got brain fog, you're exhausted. Like, I made work my entire identity for a
Yeah.
while. And I think in the beginning you kind of have to. Like there's, when you're starting a business, there's so much that you're learning and it's very overwhelming. So it's very natural to make work become your identity. And it was after that moment where I realized like, wow, what am I doing here? Like this isn't the reason I went out on my own. This is not
Yeah.
what I wanted life to look like. And so it became a very pivotal moment where and ultimately, I didn't end up hiring anybody. I scaled back. And because I was pursuing this one massive project so much, and I had to kind of reduce how much I was doing with other companies, it costed me an entire year of having to rebuild.
Wow. What advice would you give someone that's going through that currently? They're working with clients that are paying them 10K, 20K, or even 50K. They know it's not aligned, but they need the money.
Yeah. I I feel like one, it's like a rite of passage to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Like it's the same idea as like you tell a kid, don't touch the stove, but then they're going to touch it.
Yeah.
I think that the best advice that I can give is really spend time of what was your why? What is your North Star? And the more that you lean into your North Star and what it is that you just so passionately believe in, when you are lit up, you are calling in those type of clients. You are calling in those people. Like one of the best things that I learned early on in my entrepreneurship, and actually, to be honest, before I went into building my own business, I was a freelancer in 2016, 2017. So I was freelancing, and then I went in for a corporate job, and then I left to build a business because ultimately I never belonged in corporate. So it was just like a lesson. But anyways, when 2017, I remember when I first started the freelancing space, um, I would freak out about like, oh my gosh, this contract is ending. What's going to happen next? But I
Mhm.
always noticed that something else would come through. And so I just started trusting it. I started trusting the fact that, you know what? Something is always going to come through because I am so clear about what I'm putting out there. My messaging is clear. My communication is clear. I'm spending and investing my time with the type of people that I feel really energized by. And I find that when you just give because you just get so excited about it,
Yeah.
you're going to get back tenfold. So that's one piece of advice. The second thing is I'm going to give a shout out to, she's a dear friend of mine, but phenomenal executive coach. Her name is Amina Altai. She just wrote a book called The Ambition Trap. And so she's an executive coach specifically for highly ambitious, driven leaders, whether it's internal or she has like coached like tons of, entrepreneurs, an Olympic gold winner, like all of
Oh,
those things.
wow.
Yeah. And her book actually just she became a best-selling author. It was a bestseller on the USA Today list. And she's, only 2% of Middle Eastern authors are there. And she's a woman of color, a Middle Eastern author that actually made the
That's
best-selling list. It's
amazing.
amazing. But anyways, her book, The Ambition Trap, like I think every person needs to read it. Like I joke with her and I'm like, did you just write my memoir? Because it's you really feel seen. What she talks about is that there's nothing wrong with having ambition. There's nothing wrong with having drive, right?
Right.
And wanting that. But if you're operating from a place of just saying yes to anything and everything that's misaligned, you're going to ultimately end up burning yourself out, causing health problems, severing relationships, and maybe even resenting the work that you're doing. And so she talks about how do you deeply align to your purpose and lead from a place of like healing old wounds and core
Mhm.
beliefs that are just not serving you, and actually like build a business that is very ambitious, that is very driven, but operating from a place that you feel that you can hold for. So it's a really great book that I recommend everyone reading to help them go through that process. I think it's just a brilliant way of the way that she kind of puts in the framework of like what it means to be an ambitious entrepreneur.
I'll definitely have to read it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I feel that a lot of like entrepreneurs, they operate out of like the scarcity mindset.
Hmm.
And even when they do work with coaches, it's like the wrong type of coaches. It's just like, this is what worked for me. Like, this is what you need to do. And they stop thinking for themselves or really trusting their own intuition.
Absolutely. I think that the number one red flag is the minute a coach is selling you a one size fits all, run.
Yeah.
I think that, and I mean, and I'm definitely guilty of that. Like I have, I don't come from a business family. I don't come from, my parents were 9 to 5ers. That's what we grew. I grew up in that. I grew up in the whole like keep your head down, focus, and work
Yeah.
hard, right? And it was something that like when I decided to take that path and move into the space, I really needed to figure it out. And I leaned in heavy to coaches to be like, tell me, like, what do I do? What do
Yeah.
I do? And they built that one size fits all, and I knew from the beginning what I wanted to build, but I never found a coach initially who could do it. And I just trusted them. And I had this idea of, well, they have built a business, so they know what they're doing. So let me just lean into like, yes, I'll do whatever you say.
Yeah.
And I was realizing, whenever coaches talk to you about like you need to be coachable, right? It's like,
Right.
if you're not resistant. And absolutely, you absolutely need to be coachable, someone who's going to take that. But when you're met with like your internal resistance and there's something that's telling you like, I don't know about this, you need to ask yourself, like, is this feeling off because I'm just not familiar with it and I need to understand it better? Or is this feeling off because this isn't the path I want to take?
Hmm.
And so when you can answer that question for yourself, then, that opens the doors of really getting good at finding the right coach for yourself. I always say, and this is like a framework I've designed, which is like the curiosity pause. It's before you make any decision, before you have any, when you're feeling discomfort, you're feeling frustrated, whatever emotions coming up for you, take a 5-second pause and start asking more questions. Through asking more questions, you're going to ultimately get to your answer.
Yeah, I feel like that's something a lot of people avoid. It's like you
Yeah.
swipe the card right away, and it's just like, okay, I
Yeah.
have to work with this person right away. The doors are closing, or like the promotion's
Yeah.
over.
And I always say that, you know what? They'll have another promotion. They'll
Yeah.
have another door open. Like it's never, do not make decisions like if they are leading you from a place of fear that if you don't do this in this second, then you're not going to ever succeed. Again, that is not the coach you want to work with. The person you want to work with is someone who's going to say, Cindy, I love what you're building. I love everything that you're trying to do. Here is where I think you realistically are.
Hmm.
I had a coach once specifically tell me that when I wanted to work with her, she's like, you're not ready for me yet. I need you to go to this person instead. And I thought, and I had my respect level just grew tenfold for her because
Yeah.
instead of taking me on knowingly that I am not where she can help me, that was the best. Like to me, it's like integrity, right? It's
Right.
honesty. And it's like this person genuinely cares about me as a person versus just my money.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it's the other way around.
Yeah,
It's just like take your
absolutely.
money, and then it's just like you're just in like group calls.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I like to say is that find a coach, who's actually built the thing that you want to do. One of my challenges was that I knew from early on that, like I love speaking, I love curating again experiences and all those things. And I kept getting put in the box of coaching. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you should be a coach because I was a former clinical therapist. And so that comes naturally to me. But my therapist friends will tell you, they're like, Pyle, you never wanted to be a therapist. So why are you coaching? Right.
Yeah.
And so I now position myself more as an advisor because that's what I enjoy. I love like being more of a strategic advisor on your business versus a, coach to you. And I think that there's a difference with that too. A coach is someone who's going to ask you questions and have you get there. And an
Yeah.
advisor is someone who's going to get in and be like, this is what you should do.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
like, get really clear on what you're looking for. And second is, yeah, like find somebody who's actually built the business and the type of business that you want to build. And so they're familiar with that. I had a coach once who, when I said to them, like, I want to speak on stages and I want to build that, I have no interest in building coaching programs. She's like, oh, I can absolutely help you with that. But then once I got in, she had no clue on
Hmm.
how to truly build a speaking business. So that was an early lesson for me, is ask questions, see how they fidget. Do they have confidence? Like, are they very clear? Do they have a plan mapped out for you? And how do they make sure that they focus on customizing it for you versus for
Right.
somebody else?
Yeah. Seems like a
Yeah.
huge issue in the online space these days.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the biggest thing is um you went into building something because you felt passionate about something. You saw a gap in something.
Right.
And so you know what that is. And this is where, a lot of the work that I do with my, impact driven entrepreneurs and founders is I help them really identify what is your North Star. What is it that you care so deeply about making an impact in the world? Let's build that out. From there, let's actually align what are your services and offers? What is it that you want to do? How is it aligned to the things that you actually enjoy? And really paying attention to that piece. From there, it's looking at then what are the opportunities and what are the things that you can be saying yes to that are in alignment with that North Star and ultimately the impact that you really care to make. Um, when I work with my clients and with entrepreneurs and founders who really feel compelled to making a difference in the world and want to make a big impact through their mission, I always focus on what is your North Star? What is it that you feel so deeply compelled to, like, making a difference? Let's make that measurable. Then from there, we line out what are the services and offers that are actually aligned to what makes you feel like, yes, I could do this. Like, where it doesn't feel like, oh, I can kind of do it or I kind of have an idea. No, no, no. What is the thing that you feel like, close my eyes and, like, put me in, like, I got this, right? And how do you want to curate that? From there, we make decisions that are in alignment with that service, that offer, and that North Star. So when you have a clear idea of where you're heading,
Right.
then it makes it so much easier to say no to things that you don't want to do. Because when you don't know where you're going, you're going to say yes to anything. And then that's going to
Mm.
lead you to paths that are going to distract you from your actual mission. And that's where I think people get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Feel like we're losing touch with our own selves.
Yeah, and it's very easy, right? I think entrepreneurship is one of those spaces where, it really tests every part of you, like your vulnerability, your insecurities come out, like things that, you really understand how your nervous system's operating, your
Yeah.
mindset, like it really, I feel like is one of the biggest personal development life, you know, experiences that you can have.
How has your relationship with money been like throughout the years of running your business?
Yeah, I would say it's gotten better. I definitely was so, there's always two people. There's like the camps of people who like to hoard money
Yeah.
and don't spend. And then there are people who are just like, take it all. And I am definitely in the take it all camp and I will
Yeah.
overspend. Again, I do believe in, like, if you want to go far, you invest. I have friends that were very DIY and are like, I will learn everything and I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
And then there's the camp that delegates. And I will say that even though what I did do was, like, I was making a lot of money. I was making great money, but, and I've seen you, Cindy, post about this. I'm like, oh my God, she's like looking at me. Um, is that as much of money that I was making, I was putting 100% of it back into the business. So I wasn't thinking about me and, like,
Yeah.
my personal money and, like, what's going to put me in a better place. So when I walked away from that, really big deal, I was still in the same place of my business as I was when I first started in 2020. And so it became this, like, cycle of, like, thinking like, wait a second, I'm making this money. Where is it going?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's right. I invested like hundreds of thousands of dollars in coaches.
Right.
And part of the reason, where I will say that I am grateful that I did invest that, because I don't think I would have come as far as I have if it wasn't for them. But at the same time, I recognize that part of me investing so much money into coaches was because it was a perfectionist
Hmm.
you know, tactic where it's like I'm putting this money in, but it's like, so I think I'm being productive,
Yeah.
but I'm actually just being a perfectionist where it's like, let me constantly be in the strategic strategy space, but not actually execute. And, so that was challenge. So it really has, I would say that, in the last year or so, my relationship with money has changed in the sense where I actually did this little trick of instead of looking at money as like, oh my gosh, like I need like the money is the source of everything and I need this,
Yeah.
I started looking at it more as an energetic tool. And I actually gave money a name. I called it Maya, which is like, in Hindi, it's like money, right?
Yeah.
So I called it Maya and I just like started talking to it as if it's a person. And I started treating it like it's like, hey, Maya, thanks so much for being here. Like, thank you so much for helping me. What I also did was I read this book from Ken Honda, Happy Money. Loved the book so much. Actually, I listened to an audio. His voice is so soothing. It feels like you're in like just like this like guided like experience of your relation with money.
Yeah.
It's a very easy read. So I listened to the book and he talked about this like Japanese philosophy that whenever you are giving money or are getting money, when you do it with happiness,
Mhm.
you change the energy field of that like interaction. So whenever you're paying bills, right, most people will be like, oh, I have
So
to
much
pay that
anger and
bill. Like, oh
frustration.
man, exactly. It's like, damn it, I have to pay that. And so what you're doing is it's like you're so ungrateful for the fact that you're paying this bill because you received a service. You received
Yeah.
something, right? So even medical bills, as much as they are painful to have, it's like, wow, like if I didn't get to see this doctor, I may have not had understood what's going on with me. Like I should be thankful for that. So, they say arigato, right? That's their word for thank you. And so every time you do an exchange for money, you say arigato. And, I started doing that. I started saying thank you every single, I'm like, thank you, Maya. Thank you for this. And I started talking to money as if literally it's a person. And so it's like, I wrote it a letter and saying, like, Maya, like, I'm so sorry how badly I treated you over the years. I'm so sorry that I took you for granted. I'm so sorry that I didn't see your value. Like, I actually had that as if, like, I would talk to a friend. And that has completely shifted the way that I look at it, not from a place of like, I still have my impulsive behavior, like, oh my God, I should invest in this. But I actually be like, huh, is this where Maya needs to be?
Yeah.
And that just changed my relationship with it.
That's so cool. Definitely learned something new today.
Yeah. Yeah. I really believe it's energy, how you show up with like compassion for yourself. Because if you're having, and for me, having this relationship with money that feels like it's a sore point, a pain point all the time. And I think a lot of women do that, and women of color specifically, there's
Yeah.
a lot of like stigma about talking about money or about feeling good about money. It's like, you should be humble, like it's, you shouldn't be materialistic or all this, but it's
Yeah.
like, but we need money to live. What are you going to do, if you don't have it, right?
Yeah.
So, by able to like what I learned was that me shaming money wasn't actually about money. It was more about me shaming me for even wanting to feel successful.
Yeah, I definitely find that with a lot of women I work with, there's so much fear and shame built up from like their childhood, like how
Yeah.
they viewed like their parents, society talk about money, even like taxes too. There's so much like negativity around it, but it's like we'll talk about anything else, like our trips, our shopping
Yeah.
sprees, everything else, but no
Yeah.
one wants to talk about the money.
Exactly. And that has definitely changed also is that, you know, um, and I do believe it's like, with any conversation, whether it's you're talking about family or relationships or whatever it is, you can't talk about it with everyone, but you
Yeah,
have to know who your people are, right? And
right.
so I've surrounded myself now with entrepreneur girlfriends who we openly talk about. We celebrate it. We like, engage in it. If someone's having a dip, we're like, great. Like, okay, what does that mean? What is that teaching you in that moment? And, where are you investing this money? Like, where are you putting this money? We're talking about that where it's normalizing it. So it doesn't feel so like weird to bring it up.
I totally agree. Do you have any recommendations on where to connect with other like-minded women entrepreneurs? Because it does get so lonely.
Yeah, it's so lonely. I think that um I've definitely lean in. One of the things that I've found also is that first learn about what is it that you really need because there's a million entrepreneurs out there. And yeah, every entrepreneur will say that it's very lonely. And there's this like, solopreneurship as
Hmm.
well is like very, very hard and lonely. But really lean into, for example, like I have entrepreneur friends that I've made off of LinkedIn, off of Instagram, off of Threads. Actually met someone else who's in my area, who lives in my area off of Threads. We've had coffee, we've had lunch. She's come to my event. Like it's like now it's like a budding relationship, friendship. And I would say that the number one thing though to lean into is for me specifically, I like community that likes to lean into community.
Hmm.
I'm not going to events where everyone is there to what is this in for me, right?
Yeah.
So when I go to events that are more around networking and everyone is there because it's like, oh, can I get a client from this? Can I do this from this? I find those spaces to actually be a place of scarcity.
Yeah.
When I lean into communities where it's like I'm on threads and I'm seeing how someone's posting and I really like the way you're engaging, I will start with just like, voice notes on Instagram,
Hmm.
right? On the DMs and be like, oh my gosh, I really love this post. And we just start messaging back and forth. And if you're just naturally seeing that, wow, we have a lot in common in the way we approach things, hop on a Zoom from there, hop on something. I have friends now all over the world, but even in the US, like I'm in California, I've got friends in Florida, I've got friends in Colorado and Boston, wherever. And it's like we will send each other voice memos like day in and day out,
Yeah.
just to keep tabs on each other. But it really comes back to like what type of a community of entrepreneurs are you looking for? It doesn't necessarily have to be the people who are building the exact same thing you're building, but I found that, the entrepreneur friends that I've really connected with are people who believe in the similar values.
Hmm.
And, I'm building my business is really around my own podcast. Second, I'm building like a community of podcasters, but even then I'm paying attention to what kind of podcasters do I want to be around. Um, when it comes to my actual business of advising and, my work is really in supporting change makers. So, again, it doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, if you're a coach, if you're a creative, if you're a thought leader, whatever it is. But if you feel deeply compelled to making a difference in this world and you feel very driven by a mission, then I'm your gal, right? I'm
Right.
not in it if you are like, oh, I just want to make some money and sit on the beach and I don't care about making a difference in the world. Like, then great, nothing wrong with that, but that you're probably not gonna, like, love my way and approach, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it really, again, goes back to, like, lean in and don't be shy about, like, where you're meeting them.
How do you balance, like, I want to make an impact, but at the same time feel like you need to protect your peace?
Oh, that is such a good one, and very relevant for right now because, again, I think one of the things too for people to also consider when you're building your business is that it's okay to pivot. It's okay to make changes. I learned that after I kind of, when I walked away from that client, that was my way of the universe saying to me that, okay, take a chance on yourself and go do the thing you want to go do.
Mhm.
So, with that, and I started leaning more into social impact work. My background with what I did as a former clinical therapist, I worked in nonprofit settings. So I was really excited to support nonprofits. And the way I was curating it was through these immersive empathy experiences where it's like, let me highlight the work that you're doing and have people walk through this experience that's going to lead to that. Well, that created a space where my LinkedIn and I was constantly consuming all this like negative information about what's happening in the world, and right now it's on overdrive.
Yeah.
And by last year, mid-year, I got really burnt out. I remember there was a period of time between last September through December, and specifically around the U.S. elections, where I was so burnt out, I needed to completely disassociate um, with what was happening, and I literally was just watching the Flintstones.
Yeah.
I didn't even want to watch like TV because they could make a comment about something. I'm like, let's watch the Flintstones. I'm watching Care Bears. I'm watching like, DuckTales, right? And it was
Right.
like I couldn't even watch the Jetsons because they had a robot, Rosie the robot maid, and I'm like, oh my god, Elon Musk just came out with his robot this week. I can't watch this. So it was too much, and that was again another moment of like, realizing that it's okay that you want to make an impact, but also remember that as long as humans have existed, There have been issues and there's
Yeah.
problems. And as long as humans will exist, there will be problems and there will be challenges. And you alone can't carry the entire weight and the guilt of like having to solve it. One of the big, most powerful things that I learned while being in more directly involved in the social impact space was that, there is this honor and understanding that there's a revolving door. And that means that, because this work is a marathon, it's not a sprint, it's okay that, if you're doing a little bit of work and now it's your time to rest, you've given, you've done.
Yeah.
Now it's time to rest. And now you can come back. Or even like choose that one sliver of where you want to make a difference, right? Like Cindy, you're doing such phenomenal work when it comes to like helping women really understand their finances and really understand that when they're building a business, it's not just about revenue. It's also about like, what are you taking home? Like,
Mhm.
how are like you'll keep talking about like, women, including me, who say like, oh, I can't wait to have this and I can't wait to have this. But
Yeah.
that goal never seems to be realistic or happen because you're not being smart with the way that, you're making, wow, like $1 million in revenue, but okay, why don't you have any of it? Right. So
Yeah.
you're doing something so powerful for women who I think have like generationally, subconsciously like minimized what they should do and learn about money. So, but you've understood that that is your sliver. You're not now trying to say like, and I'm going to come and solve the crisis of X, it's like there is this, and I think a lot of that like weight that we carry about needing to make this massive impact really comes from that place of wanting to maybe feel validated internally or wanting to just feel, that you're doing as much in that how like it's you've got to release that people pleaser tendency and you've got to release a bit of that like emotional reactionary response to things because otherwise you're going to always feel guilty for doing the piece that you even are doing, and there's 1,000 other people, like millions of other people who are also in that same space, like there's so many people who are in the finance space, but everyone's got their sliver, and by everyone doing a piece of that sliver you're making a whole pie out of it.
Yeah, totally. And I also feel like we consume so much online as well. Before we started recording, we were talking about like unfollowing specific people
Yeah.
or people that you just don't want to like consume their
Yeah,
content anymore. And it's totally okay.
100%. I say this a lot that, we live in a time where you are consistently consuming, whether it's a TV, whether it's social media, the news is 24/7, everything. That wasn't the case, even 50 years ago, 100 years ago, right? And so news took time to travel before. And even in the 90s, it wasn't that common, right? Like we had news channels, but it wasn't this 24-hour thing. And so
Yeah.
it's this idea of knowing that, like, okay, for me now, the way I protect my mental health is I don't actually watch TV news because I just think it's like ridiculous
It's
now.
so negative.
It's so negative and it's also very biased, and there are extremes in that. I've now found like who are those independent journalists that I really like. I follow them on Substack, but I also don't have notifications on. My
Mhm.
notifications for every single app are turned off. I don't see a notification for my messages. I don't see a notification for Instagram. The only way I will know that I have something happen in there is if I actually open the app and go in there. And so similar with even when it comes to like my newsletters that I read, I have them in a category in my Gmail. I only go into there on Sundays and I read then, right? So I've just really kind of like balanced it out that like nothing different, nothing substantially different is going to happen between Monday at like 8 a.m. to Tuesday at 8 a.m.
Right.
Right. And so if I skip a few days, and also it takes time for a story to develop. And so if I wait until, Friday to read what the whole story is, now I have like more context of it versus like making assumptions. And I think assumptions can be one of the most dangerous things that we can do. So it is one of those pieces of like, you balance it out by, just giving yourself like, all right, like, what is that hour block that I'm going to read and consume things? And after that, I'm off. Like, I'm not binging this stuff.
Yeah, I feel like just being more intentional, like even for myself, I
Yeah.
feel like I followed like so many coaches, like was listening to so many podcasts, and then I
Yeah.
really just had to sit down and just like this isn't serving me anymore. Like I just need to
Right.
stop.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's so easy when you're listening to so many different coaches. It's like everyone's got their perspectives and they're all successful. So you're like, oh, maybe it's this one, maybe it's that one. And then you're just so confused. And it's like, they're all successful because they follow the path that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
So it's like you need to get in tune with like, oh, if something is making you feel uncomfortable, unfollow it. Like, and not by, and I don't mean it by the fact of like, don't allow yourself to be in spaces that like, don't create an echo chamber for yourself. But I mean it in the sense where, yeah, there's some, coaches and some, creators who I followed. But they're the way that they put things out there actually made me feel worse about myself and worse about the way I was operating, or made me have doubts about the way I was operating. So that was where I was like, you know what, I'm going to mute this and or unfollow it altogether.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Last question for you. What do you want more women to understand about success that no one's really saying out loud?
Ooh. Um, I think one of the most powerful things that women have is, first of all, I think that women, if we were just given the reins to of leadership for everything, we would have problem solved within like 6 months, right? Women
Right.
are natural collaborators, and we are, we wouldn't have as many wars, we wouldn't have as much like violence or all of these things. So I think that when we're talking about women in this particular space with like entrepreneurship and all that, and you're seeing an uptick in this right now. We're moving away from the surge of online, and we're moving back into leaning into in person. So if you can really lean into your community, and that you can see and you can dispel some of those mindset pieces around, scarcity, around that there's only room for one of us. There's only some of those things that we're taught in society and embedded within us. I think this is the most powerful thing you can do is be around community and give, and, be in a space where like you really see your value, that you start owning it, you to remove some of those, communication skills of assumption building, right? Like there are things that kind of create and sever relationships. I think that when you lean into your relationships and go from the place that is like truly your strength of genius,
Right.
you are really going to like perform and find your community and find an audience that are going to believe in your lane. Like don't look at the shiny object out there. Like pay attention, like have an internal relationship, give yourself compassion, really understand your own identity, your own narrative, because the better you understand yourself, it's going to help you react less. And so the more you can invest in your mindset and your nervous system, and the more you can actually invest in understanding, like having that clear path, that North Star aligned for you, the more you will actually feel comfortable with saying, like, oh, I love what you're doing, but I don't think it's aligned for the work that we are able to do. But here are some references. One of the most powerful things I've done is built relationships with other phenomenal entrepreneurs that are doing the work that I never want to do. And
Yeah.
so when someone comes to me and they say like, this is what I really want to do, I'd be like, oh my God, I know the right person for you. Go over there.
Yeah.
And when you do that, when you are just showing them the same way that that woman showed me that, I'm not ready, you're not ready for me yet. The more you can do that, you're also showing these other entrepreneurs, you're role modeling that like, oh, wait a second. You mean you're just passing them because you believe in me, because you believe in that, this client, like, oh, and you that gratitude comes back tenfold. Everything is about the more you give, you will see that the more will come in return.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
What is the best way for our audience to connect with you?
Yeah. So the best way is one, definitely listen to my podcast. It's called Reframing Perspectives with Payal Beri. And the podcast is all about reframing, daily perspectives, things, and, whether it's assumptions, whether it's, societal challenges or just circumstances in our everyday life that we tend to have opinions about, but don't really know how to think about it outside the box. That's what Reframing Perspectives is all about. So the podcast would be great. But beyond that, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And I'm actually starting my TikTok channel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So my TikTok channel is going to be launching on Monday. And so you can find me on TikTok and you can find me on LinkedIn. And of course, you can always go to my website, payalberry.com.
Thanks, Pyle. I'll share all of Pyle's details in the show notes. Thanks
Wonderful.
so
Thank
much
you
for
so much,
joining me here
Cindy.
today.
Thank you for having me.